"The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," Elias murmured under his breath, as rain lashed his face at 65 with dishevelled silver hair and weathered hands. He stood before a tattered circus tent on the edge of town, the midnight call from his friend Miguel still echoed in his ears. "They're dying, come now." Inside the abandoned illegal circus, the stench of neglect assaulted. His senses, his flashlight beam, cut through darkness, revealing a note pinned to a wooden post. Elias couldn't stay too dangerous there. "In the back, save them if you can. I'm in the farthest corner." Two small cages caught his attention. The first held a bobcat kitten, its silver-grey fur matted with blood, eyes blazing like embers. Despite its weakness, the second contained a lion cub, emaciated and motionless, its pale golden fur filthy. Only the slight rise and fall of its chest showed it lived at all. "What have they done to you?" Elias whispered, his heart breaking. Once the manager of our renowned circus, he had left that life behind when he realized the cruelty inflicted on animals. Now redemption stood before him in two broken creatures. With a crowbar he broke the rusty locks. The bobcat hissed weakly as he secured it in a canvas bag, while the lion cub offered no resistance when lifted. Its body was frighteningly light in his arms. "I'm taking you home," Elias said firmly, carrying them through the storm to his truck. During the drive to his wooden house at the forest's edge, he glanced repeatedly at his precious cargo, willing them to survive the night at home. He laid them before the fireplace in the warm lamplight. He saw the full extent of their suffering. The bobcat's whipped scar, the lion's broken rib. "You've got fire in those eyes, but," he told the bobcat. "I'll call you Cinder to Thelion," he whispered, "and you'll be Samson, for there's nobility in you even now, Doctor." Collins, an old friend and veterinarian, arrived quickly, despite the late hour after examination. His diagnosis was grim, severe malnutrition, infections, and trauma from prolonged captivity. They need time and maybe a miracle. The vet said, leaving medicines and instructions as dawn broke. Elias kept vigil. Between his new charges, "You'll heal," he promised, voice thick with emotion. "Both of you, and for as long as you need this." Is your home. Elias's wooden house became a sanctuary. For Cinder and Samson, he built a spacious enclosure in the backyard with high fences, trees for shade logs for climbing, and a small pond. But in those early days, neither showed interest in their new home. Cinder huddled in a corner, growling whenever Elias approached her, bright eyes wary with distrust born from human cruelty. Samson presented different challenges. While his body slowly healed, his spirit seemed broken. He lay motionless on soft bedding, his gaze vacant, as if he'd forgotten how to hope. "His body is healing," Dr. Collins observed during one visit, "but it's like his spirit has given up." Elias refused to accept this daily. He sat near them, talking softly or singing old folk songs. She crafted toys from rope and feathers, placing them near Cinder, who only stared unmoving. Sometimes late at night he'd catch glimpses of her, batting at the toys, when she thought no one was watching. One spring morning, everything changed. While cleaning the enclosure, Elias accidentally dropped a small rubber ball. It bounced towards Cinder's corner. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly she pounced, her small body, growing stronger each day, arced through the air as she landed on the ball, sending it rolling away. With unexpected grace, she chased after it, momentarily forgetting her fear from his corner. Samson lifted his head, following her movements with interest. His first real engagement with his surroundings. Elias stood perfectly still, afraid to break the spell. A smile spread across his face, tears glinting in his eyes. It was a small moment, but felt like witnessing a miracle. After that day, he began allowing Cinder and Samson closer together, under careful watch. Initially, Cinder hissed at the lion cub, territorial and defensive. But as weeks passed, something unexpected happened one afternoon. She dragged the rubber ball across to where Samson lay, pushing it toward him as if inviting play. Samson, still weak but improving, reached out a paw to touch it. Elias laughed, allowed tears streaming down his face. "Well, I'll be," he whispered. "You're saving each other." The changes came steadily after that. Cinder grew more active, her silver fur becoming sleek. Samson began to stand and take faltering steps, his golden coat regaining luster. They played together, Cinder leaping over Samson's back, Samson pretending to chase through still sluggish. Elias noticed their unique bond. When thunderstorms made Cinder cower, Perhaps reminded of whips, Samson Woodley closed his steady presence, calming her when Samson struggled to eat. Cinder sometimes groomed his fur unusual behavior for a bobcat each night. Elias watched them sleep near each other. Not quite touching, but close enough for comfort, he began keeping a journal recording each small victory in their healing journey as autumn painted the forest. Goldcinder and Samson continued growing stronger. Now satiate, Elias devoted his days to them, finding purpose in their care. Cinder had developed into a magnificent bobcat, her silver-grey coat, thick and healthy. Thescar on her shoulder had faded to a thin white. Lion Samson, though still young for a lion, was growing into his frame. His golden mane beginning to frame his face. His once broken rib had healed, but he sometimes wheezed after exertion. Despite their progress, the past left Mark Cinder still cowered. At sudden loud noises, as if expecting a whipped sting, Samson occasionally limped when tired Elias added a rock den for Cinder and a shaded platform for Samson, allowing each to retreat when needed. Unlike his circus days, Elias didn't train them for performance. Instead, he taught trust through patience, sitting near them each day reading aloud from his worn Bible. For every beast of the forest is mine, he often read, finding comfort in the words trouble came, when neighbors spotted wild animals and reported Elias to wildlife authorities. Though he explained he'd rescued them from an illegal circus, the law was clear. Bobcats native to the area must be released. If healthy lions required special permits, the authorities ordered Cinder's release. Elias spent anguished hours by the enclosure, preparing her for freedom by reducing contact and teaching hunting skills with toy prey. On release day, Elias drove with rangers to a forest 50 mi away when the carrier opened. Cinder hesitated, glancing back at Elias in amazement both poignant and unexpected. She approached and briefly pressed her nose to his hand before darting. Into the trees live well, Cinder, Elias whispered, tears streaming freely, returning home. He found Samson lying motionless in his enclosure, eyes dull as if sensing his companion's absence. I won't leave you, Elias promised, stroking the young lion's mane through. His connections he secured Apamit to keep Samson as an educational animal, building a larger enclosure and spending hours comforting the listless lion, but nothing seemed to fill the void Cinder left behind each night. Elias sat beside Samson, recounting stories of their time together, hoping his voice might soothe both their aching hearts. Without Cinder, Samson sank into lethargy. Now grown with a magnificent golden mane, he ate little and spent hours sprawled by the pond, his gaze empty. Elias, turning 70, felt the void too. He secured the permit to keep Samson, permanently expanded the enclosure with every comfort, but knew nothing could replace Cinder's presence. Elias's health began to wane. Arthritis made his movement stiff and painful, especially in cold. Whether he worried constantly if something happened to him, who would care for Samson with the same devotion? One frigid winter night, 10 years after Cinder's release, Elias heard rustling outside. Leaning heavily on his cane, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. In the beam, he saw a grown bobcat, its silver-grey fur glinting in the moonlight, a familiar scar visible on its shoulder. Cinder, he called softly. Heart pounding, the bobcat met his gaze, without flinching in a moment that seemed impossible. It allowed Elias to reach out and touch its head briefly. Then, with a quiet chirp, it led 3 small bobcat kittens from the bushes. Celia's sank onto the porch steps, overwhelmed. You came back, he whispered, and you brought your family. Night after night, Cinder and her kittens returned, resting near the fence of Samson's enclosure. The lion, sensing his old friend's presence, began to change. He stood, more often paced the enclosure boundaries, and his eyes regained some of their former brightness. Sometimes he would press against the fence closest to where Cinder rested, and she would lie on the other side, separated by wire, but connected by memory. Once Cinder brought a small rabbit she had caught, placing it near the fence as if offering a gift. Elias chuckled through tears. You always were one of a kind, he said. Dr. Collins, still making occasional visits despite his own advancing age, marveled at the change in Samson. I've never seen anything like it, he admitted. It's as if her presence alone is healing him. Some bonds transcend explanation, Elias replied simply. As spring approached, Samson roared for the first time in years, not in anger or pain, but with vigor that echoed through the forest. Cinder's kittens, initially startled, soon grew accustomed to the sound, even playfully stalking along the Fence as Samson paced. Within it's like they're playing together. Elias told Dr. Collins, despite the barrier between them, the vet smiled. Perhaps that's the miracle you always hoped for. 3 more years passed. Elias, now 75 and increasingly frail, relied on a walk at Torwich the porch each evening. Cinder continued her visits, though less frequently. As her kittens matured and established their own territories, still she would appear on special nights, as if sensing when Elias or Samson needed her most. Samson, his mane now strewn with grey, had regained much of his vitality. Though he would never be as powerful as a wild lion, he moved with dignity around his spacious enclosure, often greeting Elias with gentle headbutts against the fence one winter evening as snow fell in thick silent flakes. Elias sat wrapped in blankets on the porch. Cinder appeared from the forest edge, now alone, as her grown kittens had dispersed. She approached, closer than usual, settling near Elias's feet, while Samson pressed against the nearby fence, rumbling softly. "My unlikely family," Elias whispered, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Thank you for healing each other and for healing me." He closed his eyes, feeling at peace as the snow continued to fall. When morning came, the mail carrier found Elias still seated on the porch, a serene smile on his face, having passed quietly. In the night, Samson's mournful roar echoed through the forest that day, a sound so powerful it brought tears to the eyes of the wildlife officials who came to assess the situation. Following Elias's detailed, written wishes, they transferred Samson to a reputable sanctuary, where he lived out his remaining years in peace. Cinder was never seen at the house again, but 4 years afterward, hikers in the nearby forest occasionally glimpsed a bobcat with distinctive markings and an unusual lack of fear toward respectful humans. Some reported seeing her leading younger bobcats along forest paths, teaching them to hunt and survive. Elias's journal, filled with detailed accounts of Cinder and Samson's remarkable bond, was discovered among his possessions, published online by his few friends, alongside photographs he had taken. The story touched millions worldwide. The final entry, written the day before his death, read simply, "Love heals all wounds, even the deepest scars fade." When touched by compassion, these 2 broken creatures saved each other, and in doing so they saved me. God's grace comes in unexpected forms, sometimes with fur and claws and hearts bigger than we could imagine. The wooden house eventually fell into disrepair, but the land was purchased by a wildlife rehabilitation center, ensuring that Elias's legacy of healing and compassion continued for generations to come.